And just as we wait for everybody else to finish joining our webinar today, it is a pleasure for me to introduce you to Dr. Gus Castellanos, who's on the call with us today. Gus, go ahead and say hello to everyone.
Hey, everybody. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. So Gus and I are going to be co-hosting today's session. I'm going to kind of kick it off, and then Gus is going to take over and take you through the rest of it. Hopefully, most of you, if not all of you, were at our kickoff meeting. But just to let you know, Gus is an MD, neurologist. Neurology is his specialty, as well as sleep. I'm sure, Gus, you can give a quick summary of your background for those of you who don't remember or weren't on that kickoff call.
My background is your logo and everything. We leave it at that because, yeah, so very quickly, kidding thing. Thank you for allowing me to kid through all of this. I find humor very important today of all days, but retired neurologist and sleep specialist, was at the University of Miami, undergraduate and medical school, and practiced medicine for 25 years. And came to mindfulness when I was practicing for my own issues with burnout and, just job-related stress and things like that. And it was in 2009 when I started teaching mindfulness after I retired from medicine. I've been teaching mindfulness all over South Florida for the last 11 years, many different places, academic centers, nonprofits, hospitals. So it's a real pleasure and honor to be here with you all today. So thank you, especially today for mindfulness.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and begin with my screen share. So let's see if this will let me share my screen. Okay. So today, just as a reminder to all of you, can everybody see that? Okay, just a reminder again, as always, that you've got some buttons at the bottom of your screen so that you can raise your hand. You can use the chat to ask any questions that come up throughout today's session. And reminder of the incentives associated with these webinars. So there will be 3 winners for participation in all of the webinars. And also those who are logging into the Sapoznik Fitness app for movement. The winners are drawn at the very end and also include you participating in the polls throughout the sessions. There is also 1 winner for each session who will be raffled off at the end of each individual session for $30. And again, always a reminder that we're here to answer your questions. If anything comes up after the session that you're unsure about, these are our number and emails for you to contact us. Today we're going to be delving into the science of mindfulness and breath, and we've got a few other mindfulness related seminars coming up that link in and further develop what we're going to introduce to you today. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, to go ahead and register for all of the ones coming up in November and in December. So let's begin by asking you how you feel today. Use a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very unhappy and stressed, and 1 being very happy and calm. Go ahead and rate yourself as you feel right now, at this very minute, in this moment. There's no right or wrong answer, and your answer is anonymous. So we've got 1 more of you who hasn't answered, so go ahead and give us your rating, please. All right. Okay, so it seems like a pretty good day, actually, I have to say, being a Tuesday. Okay, so most of you are in the 3, 4, 5, some of you up there in the 7s. But most of you here are doing pretty well. A couple of you not so well. Nobody feels very unhappy, very, very happy and calm. So let's see how we can move these numbers. I'm going to go ahead and share these results just so that you guys can all, guys and gals, ladies and gents, can see what the majority have said. Okay, so let's go ahead and ask you another question. Do you think stress is good or bad? Okay, we have some very, very interesting answers coming up. Excellent. Okay, so most of you believe that it's both good and bad. Well, I'm pleased to hear that, because actually stress is a sign that your body is strong, it's healthy, and it's doing what it's supposed to do, preparing you to rise to whatever challenge you may have. So stress is a great and very useful tool for our body. The issue with stress is when we're not able to discharge unnecessary stress or old stress or accumulated stress. So let's just talk a little bit about what happens in the brain when we perceive a threat. Now, in the olden days, it used to be a cougar or an alligator, maybe, since we're in South Florida. Nowadays, it could be a phone call or an email from somebody, or even just the stress of not knowing what's going to happen after today's elections. So when we get that perceived stress, our brain has a wonderful mechanism to set off the alarm system in the body. And the alarm system is located here in the amygdala, in kind of the base, kind of in the middle base of the skull, if you will. And the amygdala is in charge of secreting a series of hormones to get our body ready to fight, to flee, or to freeze if we needed to freeze and act as if we were, dead or frozen, right? As an immediate response. It bypasses our logic, all right? And it's strengthened with fear and uncertainty, and it's embedded as a memory of past experience. So the more we trigger it, the easier it triggers. The amygdala usually makes non-rational decisions and takes over our bodily functions, right? So it could be an accelerated heartbeat, it could be sweating, it could be panting and making sure that we get enough air. But unfortunately, all of those functions are there as emergency functions. And in lieu of that, we cancel out a very important part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, the left prefrontal cortex to be exact. So if you all want to take your hand, your left hand, and go ahead and touch the top left side of your forehead. All right, you can even tap it. This part of your brain is the one that actually has the feelings of joy, the ability to focus, to allow you to concentrate, to control your emotions, to give you self-awareness, and allow you also to plan and make decisions. So if we're getting the amygdala online and the prefrontal cortex offline, you can start to imagine what is going to happen with our physical and emotional state. So speaking of that, physical manifestations of that stress, what currently or in the past 6 months do you feel you've suffered from in terms of conditions? And you can choose multiple ones. And again, this is an anonymous poll, so feel free to be as honest as possible. If you haven't suffered from any of these, you can select none of the above at the very bottom. So most of you, it looks like, are feeling migraines and headaches. The irritability, forgetfulness, that's usually a big one, foggy brain, excessive tiredness or lethargy, indeed. Okay, so I'm going to share those results as well. So migraines and headaches, and that could also have a lot to do with your posture. If you did not attend our ergonomics webinar at the beginning or haven't been practicing those lovely stretches that we showed you, you can go ahead and review that webinar through your company website. So a lot of these, in fact, most of these conditions are results of a stressed body. So they're results of undischarged stress. And when you have undischarged stress, this is what your brain looks like. So it starts to look very blue, if you will. And that's, I mean, obviously just the color of the scan. But on the left-hand side, as you can see, the brain is not illuminated very much. And certainly the front parts of the brain are not illuminating hardly at all, okay? So you're going to have those reactions that we just saw of being anxious, feeling depressed, maybe being angrier or jumping at people more than maybe you're used to, feeling maybe a little withdrawn or unmotivated, more judgmental or forgetful, maybe just even antisocial behavior or just feeling violent. And certainly with all of the stress that we have with today's elections, we're seeing that that's definitely something that's being anticipated. So with this in mind and understanding those two parts of the brain and what each of them represent, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Castellanos, who's going to help us view a little bit of the science behind mindfulness and how it's a wonderful practice for all of us to engage in. So let me know if it's letting you share.
Okay. Got it.
Yep. Can everybody see his screen?
Is that yes is yes? I can't see
Yes.
anybody. But
Yeah.
okay.
All right, great.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Teba. A nice introduction that makes it a little bit easier for me. And so I am going to speak a little bit about the science and about mindfulness and then get into a practice, because I think that's where the real important aspect of this little talk is. But as all of you have probably some awareness about mindfulness, it's in your awareness in the sense that you may have heard about it, you may have actually practiced. One of the main reasons that is because mindfulness has been so well researched. It's really considered an evidence-based practice. And you can see here the graph of the exponential growth of research. And this is, we call it legitimate research in clinical scientific journals, peer-reviewed, not like Time Magazine and yoga journals that they have a lot of mindfulness, but this, we're talking here about real science. And that's what's made the, allowing us to come to places like Berkowitz, but certainly academic centers and police stations and prison systems, the military, with the evidence behind it to suggest why it may be useful for the different populations. But you can see starting 20 years ago, just this exponential rise in research, and it continues. It's still blossoming quite a bit. And there's been many different ways that the research is done. I'll speak to it in briefly, but know that it's expanding and there's a lot of it. If you want to find out anything about a particular condition, my usual suggestion is to go ahead and find a legitimate search engine, whatever that may be for you these days. Hopefully, one that is has got a science behind it, and just search for mindfulness in whatever condition. But one of the first studies that was done back in 2003, as you see here, looked at both brain and immune system as related to a flu vaccine, showing the benefits of the mindfulness practices, particularly an 8-week course called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, and also all of these other improvements in things like pain, anxiety, which I'll talk a little bit more in a moment. And like Teba was saying, the left side of the brain, there seems to be a left shift on the activity of the left frontal cortex, where the symptoms like happiness, joy, and being confident all rise. So what if you could become calm and focused and responsive with this one practice? And what is this one practice? So we're going to do another poll. And so when you're ready, if you can pick the definition or what you think mindfulness is from this list. Good job. A couple more people. One more. All right, this is interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. So what it's not, it's easier to define what it's not. It is not a breathing exercise, religion, or an attempt to quiet the mind or calm the body, relax, or achieve an altered state. It's not even an exercise to reduce your anxiety, your pain, your depression, or an exercise to make your brain left prefrontal cortex more active. That's not what mindfulness actually is. So what mindfulness actually is really hard to define. In fact, I'm very fond of saying, if you want to know what mindfulness is, the best way to know that is by practicing and then discussing it with like-minded people with experience, teachers and groups and such of that. But partly we know that mindfulness, we can say that mindfulness is a innate capacity that all humans have. I'll talk about in a moment. It has to do with attention and awareness. And we all have the capacity to pay attention and to be aware of where our attention is. So we're not teaching anybody a new skill. It's actually not and something you're going to be learning to do. We're going to be uncovering or bringing forth the capacity to do this, to be mindful, to be attentive, to be aware. And so it's been called a state, which means you can be in this mindful state right now, but the more you practice it, it becomes what we call a trait. It becomes more hardwired, particularly because of the brain changes. So it's a state and a trait, and it's also the practice to bring forth the state of being in that attentive and awareness situation, alertness. And at the same time, because we are using our minds and our brains, it is what we call it's mental fitness, or brain workout, as you see here. The way I word it simply is, mindfulness is about being in the present moment, aware of what is happening and what you're doing in the present moment as it's happening and as you're doing it. So it's not just being in the moment, some people say, but it's being aware of what you're actually doing and what's happening in the moment. And also, most of us say there's an attitude about how that's done. So the attitudes that we most commonly use is being non-judgmental, just being non-judgmental about being attentive. I'm paying attention to this and noticing all this stuff. Try not to judge the what your mind is doing, so you can see more clearly. Or some people say keeping a friendly, curious, kind attitude. So it's being in the present moment, aware of what you're doing in the present moment as you're doing it, with a non-judgmental, friendly attitude. And it allows you to be able to see very clearly what's happening rather than what you wish was happening or wish was not happening. And so all the definitions of mindfulness have something to do with that, being attentive, aware, in the moment, non-judgmentally so. And so what are the benefits? And like I said before, the list is so long that I'm not going to cover them all here, just going to hit some of the highlights. I divide the benefits into 4 categories, beginning with the physical health, because main program, the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, the so-called secular therapeutic form of mindfulness, was begun in 1979 at the University of Massachusetts School of Medicine in a hospital. And so most of what happened there was going to be within the physical and mental health world. And you can see here some of the things that it helps. But back then, even early on, the first 10 years of these programs, it was clear that this was very good for chronic pain, chronic low back pain, chronic migraines, chronic headaches, neck pain, arthritic pain, whatever the pain may be coming from. Because it doesn't do anything, just to be clear, it doesn't do anything for the source of the pain, but it changes your relationship and your perception of the pain and the pain-related disability. So that's been well known from the beginning. And shortly thereafter, the immune system was noted in a famous study done in the early 90s on psoriasis. People practicing mindfulness had better outcomes from their psoriasis, but now it's well known, which counteracts the stress, the chronic stress effects on immune system. The immune system is lowered and affected by chronic stress, and mindfulness reverses that. It also reduces inflammation. Inflammation is really big in a lot of diseases now, usually thinking about it in things like rheumatoid arthritis and multiple sclerosis and the inflammatory diseases. But many people are saying cardiovascular disease, having heart attacks and strokes starts with inflammation. It's less about the cholesterol and the plaques, more about the inflammation. So it lowers the inflammation, and it does so in an interesting way at the genetic level. Mindfulness practices down-regulates inflammatory response at a gene level. And then we go into the whole story about the diabetes and blood sugars better control. It also leads to better dieting and better exercise, blood pressure, heart rhythm problems, chronic fatigue, irritable bowel syndrome, multiple sclerosis, cancer-related treatment side effects like chemo brain, a whole host of different benefits in the so-called physical health world. But where mindfulness has been the biggest impact by far, including the most reproducible and consistent research outcomes, is going to be in mental health. And this was seen early on with anxiety, stress and anxiety, but then it went on to depression. And these findings in the mental health world are so significant that in England, where they have a national health service, meaning everybody gets free care by the government, they now cover mindfulness classes. If you come to your doctor with depression or anxiety or insomnia, they can write you a prescription for a mindfulness class rather than give you a pill, and it's covered fully. So, you know, it has to have pretty good research for a government to be able to be paying for something. But as you can see here, it's also very helpful for relapse prevention and substance use, and it helps foster positive emotions, reversing the effects of the negativity bias, where we are more focused on our negative emotions rather than the positive ones. And in all of this together increases the resilience and our ability to tolerate uncertainty. And so that's where the bulk of the research has been done. But more and more lately, we're seeing research on things like this, the social life, because if you may have heard of a program or whatever you call it, called Emotional Intelligence, written by Dan Goleman, that came out maybe in the early 90s. So Dan Goleman was actually originally a mindfulness practitioner, and he still uses mindfulness in his classes because he found that people who practice mindfulness, the ability to regulate emotions and impulse control goes way up, which makes better, not only humans, but better leaders and better whatever it is that you do in your work capacity. The way that mindfulness changes the brain increases empathy and compassion by direct changes of those parts of the brain. And so it's a pro-social practice for sure. And it helps us see more perspective. When people practice mindfulness, they do open up their tolerance of multiple, even opposing views, different polarities, as well as opening up perspective to those people that you don't disagree with, something that we may be able to put into play today and tomorrow, see what happens. So And then finally, this is work I've done also at the University of Miami. We have a neuroscience of mindfulness program there. I did some research, but a while ago. But now they really focus on the cognitive effects. So this is why the workplace mindfulness has gotten so popular, because it really helps people focus, and working memory, concentration, and mood all improve. And at the same time, it reduces the unwanted mind wandering and rumination. Generally speaking, when our minds wander in an unwanted way, or when we ruminate, it usually is in a negative way. We're usually time traveling, worrying about the future, or rehashing and remorseful about the past, or having our self-critical, self-negative talk coming up. And so mindfulness tends to reduce that. But because, as you'll see in the practice today, we really are just focusing our attention and practicing concentrating, it does increase concentration and memory, which will be that much more productive, particularly during times of chronic stress like we may be in this pandemic. The pandemic is becoming chronic, as you all know, all the effects that they're building up. And now we have the whole thing with the election, who knows what's going to happen, and we're hitting into the holidays, a different kind of holidays. So the chronicity of the stress is going to degrade our ability to focus and concentrate. And some of you put that on your on the poll answers. And also our ability to remember. And also when that happens, our ethical behavior begins to degrade. And mindfulness can be an antidote to all of that. And so very briefly, how does it work? Well, the answer is we don't know. However, we have some hints. Part of it is how it changes the brain. It changes the brain in some particular ways. So to begin with, it enhances the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain that Teba was talking about up here in the front. It's our executive control center. It's where we have our what we do for work, what we do for planning, for creativity, and the seat of our impulse control. And so that part of the brain is enhanced, as are the areas for memory, for emotional regulation, for empathy, for knowing how our body is feeling from the inside out. And so people will become more intuitive. They truly tap into their gut feelings, if you will. And the ability to what we call decenter or decouple. This is something called meta-awareness. Awareness, we cultivate the ability to be aware of where our attention is, and that stepping back and sort of witnessing things is called decoupling by psychologists, which what it does is we step back from, especially when we're triggered and our mind is going all over the place, we can step back from our thoughts so we're not so identified and get caught up in and then hijacked by the emotional state into doing some things that are not healthy for us. We're able to actually step back and see that's happening and then choose to do something that is healthier than react as we normally do. And that activity that I'm talking about, changing the brain, is something that is you can cultivate it, and it's trainable over time. The more we practice mindfulness, the simple act of paying attention to what's happening in the present moment, and with that so-called non-judgmental attitude, the more the brain cells wire together and stay that way, and makes it easier to be in that state, so that it becomes a trait. Because in the end, mindfulness is not really a meditation practice. It's a way of being in relationship to the moment-to-moment experience of your life. So like I say to people in my classes all the time, we're not trying to make you better meditators here. We're trying to give you better lives, which partly you define, not us. And so by being in the moment to moment, the brain changes, and the benefits, whatever they may be for you, will start to come into play. So you can teach old dogs new tricks, and you can teach young dogs new tricks too. Yeah, it's been used quite a bit in early childhood too. So having said all that about being an evidence-based practice, primarily for me though, this is an experience-based practice, in that it is the experience of millions of people now over many, many years that have gained the benefit that is really what the selling point is. Because we can show the research that this happened over here in this institution or in this group of people or in that population, but that may or may not apply to you. but because people in those, it really is something that is very, it's unique. It's unique experience to everybody, but everybody can do this. Remember, it's innate capacity that everybody has to practice mindfulness, and we'll go into the practices now. So that experience base is really what's really blossomed the popularity, if you ask me. So we're going to do a couple of practices today. So like I said, one of them is going to be a short meditation for about 10 minutes. I think we have time for 10 minutes, but the first one we're going to do here is I want to call it butt off the cushion meditation. And we have a number of these meditations that we have, but you can bring this mindful awareness, this present time awareness to what you're doing, to any activity you do during the day. And so we're going to have you do 2 of these here now. So, Teba, did you want to say something? Or?
No, I'm happily listening.
Okay. So one of the ones we chose to suggest is going to be hand washing, because these days, presumably, we're washing our hands more than usual, or at least as much as we really have to, or putting hand sanitizers. So we're going to ask you to stand up and go wash your hands now. And before you go, the suggestion is to just bring attention to the primary sensations that you're feeling in your hands. The touching of the hands with each other, and the water, the lather, as well as perhaps any smells that may be coming. So you can also do this with hand sanitizer, and also looking at seeing what you see, the soap bubbles and the water coming. So the primary senses of touch, smell, and sight. And secondly, walking to wherever your sink is or wherever you're going to do this, bringing your attention to the soles of the feet as you walk. That simple act. And when your mind wanders away and you get busy and you start judging and all that, just come back to the sensation. Don't judge anything that happens, just coming back and just doing that. So taking a few minutes to go walk mindfully to wherever you want to wash your hands, and then come back. And we're giving you 3 or 4 minutes to do this.
Yeah, I'll be doing my gong thing to bring you all back. So like Gus said, take your time, feel your steps, feel your body as it moves to wherever your sink is, and engage your primary senses. And we'll see you back here in a moment. When you come back, go ahead and give us a heads up that you're back at your seat if your video is not on.
You can see the screen, right? Because I'm still sharing. Okay, right. No, maybe do that.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play my gong. I hope you're all back. We can't see everybody, but you're more than welcome to turn your video on so that we can see you as you come back from your mindful walking and mindful hand washing.
Yeah, especially now, since we're going to ask you to close your eyes and not look, but yeah. So thank you for that. And we get a moment after this practice now. We'll do, this will be more of what we call a formal mindfulness meditation, an awareness of breath, focused attention practice for not even 10 minutes. And then we'll get an opportunity to share about what your experiences may have been like, both in the informal practices you just did and now this practice. And here we have a pretty nice little schematic. We're going to choose an object to pay attention to. When you notice the mind's wandered away, you can label it, you can just note that, and then coming back without judging, back to your object that you chose, and just doing that over and over and over. And I'll guide you through it with lots of reminders and instructions. So. And of course, it's always voluntary. Can't make you do this. So if you feel like it's not right for you to be doing this right now, please just sit quietly on the side. Otherwise, if you care to join us, finding a comfortable seated position. And although in our classes we say it's okay to lay down if you feel that is what's best for you right now, I'd suggest to try just sitting. This is a short practice. Feeling the body grounded on the seat that you're on. And feeling into really being grounded on that seat. Because that seat is grounded on the floor of the building you're in, which of course is grounded into the earth. You might actually feel the groundedness all the way into the earth. And so you know where you are in that spot in your environment, that physical space. You're not on some cyberspace Zoom room or web-based place. And as you feel that sense of being grounded on the seat that you're on, perhaps feel a sense of being supported at the same time by that seat. Support that comes with no effort on your part. You can trust that you'll be supported for this practice. And then elongating upright, allowing the eyes to close or simply lowering the gaze if you prefer to keep them open, not a problem. Many people do. And then just becoming aware of the fact that you're breathing. Just allowing the breath to be as it is. Remember, this is not a breathing exercise. Those are really good. We're not doing those here now. Literally breathing in, knowing the breath coming into the body, breathing out, knowing the breath leaving the body, breath by breath. And then this will be what we call a focused attention practice, inviting you to choose an object in the body to bring your attention to. And most people choose the breath in the part of the body where it's most vivid, most alive, most calling out your attention. And that's usually the belly or the nostrils. But for you, it might be the chest, the throat, or the back body. The actual object doesn't really matter. It's just what's most available for you right now. And just bring your attention there. Just noticing the sensations, the rising and falling at the belly, the tingling, tickling of the air coming in and out of the nostrils, expansion, contraction at the chest. And it may be for you like it's happening to a lot of people these days, partly because the COVID virus is a respiratory illness, or because of a lot of anxiety. Attending to the breath is very challenging. It's dysregulating and activating. So you can bring your attention to your hands and fingers, noticing what's available there, to what sensations, or the feet, or the body making contact with the seat that you're on. And so it's whatever object, anchor as we call them, that supports your practice right now. And using that for the remainder of this short practice. And soon, or perhaps already, you notice the mind begins to wander away from the object you've chosen. If that's the case for you, please know that is common. It happens to all of us. And it's not a problem, something bad. You're not failing at this. It's really just your mind doing its thing. It does what it does. It thinks, it plans, it worries, distracts itself. When you notice that that's happened, that's actually a moment of mindfulness. That's that awareness. Just remember to come back. Come back to the practice. Come back to the object you've chosen, back to the present moment, without judging or criticizing. Keeping that friendly, non-judgmental attitude. Noticing where the mind is right now. Is it on the anchor you've chosen, the breath or otherwise? Or is it in some other place at some other time? Or perhaps it's getting sleepy, tired, bored. Again, these are just mind states to be noticed, not to be resisted, just to be noticed, and then remembering to come back. And doing so without giving yourself a hard time again and again. As many times as the mind wanders away, that many times bringing it back, even if it's 1,000 times. For every time you notice the mind wandering away from the practice, and you remember to come back and you bring the attention back to the practice, you're strengthening the mindfulness and your attention. And you're learning to step back from the distractions, from the noisy mind, from the negative feelings. And so when you're ready, as we come to an end of this practice, taking a moment to just congratulate yourself for whatever it is that happened here. Not that anything specifically was supposed to happen, but just whatever happened, just give yourself credit for that. And then with an awareness of doing so, lifting the gaze, opening the eyes, if they've been closed, returning your attention to your surroundings, checking in with where you are first, and then Coming back to the Zoom room, if you will. Thank you. So we have another poll up, I guess.
So go ahead, as you come back to the room, have a look at the poll that's up on the screen and give yourself a new rating based on how you feel right now after that practice. We have a couple more of you just waiting on. Okay, so it looks like overall we moved from 5s and 6s down to 4, 3s, 2s, and a couple people feeling a 1. That's fantastic news.
If I can say something very quick though,
Yes.
yeah, especially when you're new to this, be aware that you're actually, because we're training ourselves to be aware and more present with what's going on rather than running away from what's going on, you may actually be more aware how anxious you really are. And it may shift temporarily to a higher sense of not feeling, feeling more anxiety. So this isn't, if you did notice more anxiety when you did this practice, it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong or it didn't work for you. It may be that you just have that much more awareness going on. So thanks.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitely one of the things that also comes up when we do this mindful practice is to realize everything that we're feeling and becoming aware of all this heightened emotion in like, high definition. And it all starts with awareness, doesn't it? So that's the beauty of mindfulness, is that we're learning to focus our attention in these times as well, where we have so much noise around us with social media and gadgets and electronics and just life in general, that if I think there was ever a time where we needed this practice of focusing on one thing and one thing only, it's now, it's today, it's our generation. And it's our world as it is today. So I really like this quote that I'm sharing up on screen, and I wanted to share it with you. Your diet is not only what you eat, it's what you watch, what you listen to, what you read, and the people you hang around with. So be mindful of the things you put into your body emotionally, spiritually, and physically as well, because that will also come up throughout the day and throughout the week, the months, and the years. And I just wanted to, last but not least, show you also this cartoon, which I think very easily describes the simplicity of mindfulness and the mindfulness practice. And just observing what the dog is seeing are those 4 trees in the distant horizon. That's it. Just the present moment. Not what's ahead of us, what may happen in the future, not what's behind us that we have no control over, we cannot change. We can only be in the place where we are now. And that's what's going to hopefully bring us a little bit more peace and calm and happiness and contentment. Because usually being in, being that anxiety and that fear is associated with being in the future, and feelings of depression and sadness and, just kind of wanting things to be a little different than they are is usually because you're relating to something in the past that is no longer here and now. So a reminder for you to just remember what Dr. Castellanos has mentioned about this practice. It's not something new we're teaching you. It's within all of us. And along those lines, for those of you who feel that perhaps you know you're in a tricky spot right now, I wanted to just launch one last poll, and or almost the last poll, and just ask you if you know or are you aware that Berkowitz and Providence Wealth Advisors offers a free and anonymous service for you to speak with a mental health specialist about any issues that you may be facing. Some of you may or may not know that this is available. It is available to you. The question is, do you know how to avail of this service? And it sounds or feels like perhaps you know that it's there, but you may not know how to reach out. So I'd like to just share with you a slide for you to make a note. Even if you don't feel that you need it today, I would like to invite you to pick up your pen and paper and maybe a Post-it note and make a note of the number at the bottom of the screen, 833-859-7069. This is a number for you to text, and you text them with your name and your company name, and they will call you back to schedule an appointment. This is a free service to you. It is anonymous. It is available to you at any time of the day or night or of the week. So please write down that number and maybe just post it to your screen or somewhere on your fridge, somewhere where you know where that number is, in case you or anybody you know needs it.
If I can just say something very quickly,
Yeah.
thank you. So it's so wonderful you offer this service, and I would encourage you to take advantage of it. There's a lot of stigma about reaching out sometimes like this. You don't need to, but also I just wanted to make sure that you know that mindfulness is not going to be curing you of everything. Sometimes we do need professional help. And again, like I was mentioning before, the mindfulness may actually make you really aware of how bad you are feeling. And that maybe that you do have to make that call and just reach out. Doesn't cost you anything, and it may be just a simple conversation. So encouraging you to take advantage of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Gus. That's a great tip there. And also, I think something to note is that you may or may not be feeling depressed or suicidal, but it may just be like, you know, you're worried about your finances, or you're feeling like you can't cope or deal with the kids at home, or you're just, you know, you're having really bad dreams. I mean, it doesn't need to be the absolute extremes. So this is a number for specialist counseling that you can all reach out to at any time. And having said that, we're going to come to a close of this session. I'd like to invite you to join us for the next few sessions that we're going to be hosting with Dr. Castellanos. We're going to be taking this a few steps further, a few steps deeper. We're going to be practicing different things. And the next one that we're going to be discussing is about understanding and discovering hidden bias, the judgments and the prejudices that we may or may not know that we have, and how to actually work at uncovering them and possibly reducing or eliminating them altogether. So if you haven't already made a note or registered, this is the website at the bottom. I'm going to launch one last poll to ask you what you thought of today's session, what you thought about the scientific research that we've shared with you about mindfulness, how you enjoyed Dr. Castellanos being on our webinar today. And I'm going to open it up to questions for anybody who wants to ask questions. We have a few minutes if anybody would like to bring a question to either the chat or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask Dr. Castellanos directly. The floor is yours. And if you are not able to, you always have our numbers. If you want to give us a call or send us an email, you can do that as well. So if you have any questions or anything came up that you want to share with us, or maybe you just want to share how your experience changed from the beginning to the end of today's webinar, if you found that to be particularly surprising or different to what you expected, happy to hear that as well.
I have something I want to add, if you don't mind.
Sure, Lisa.
Somebody passed this on to me, and it's along the lines of the mindfulness thing, and it really helped out when things get a little overwhelming, and it's really directly along the lines of what we went through, what we did today. And it was, you sit there and you look at, it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You might even know about it, and it's 5 things I see. And you look and you focus on that. And then 4 things I hear, 3 things I smell, 2 things I can touch or feel, and then the last one was 1 good thing I like about myself. And when I was having moments of like being overwhelmed and like that, I would do that exercise, and if anything, it brings you back. It brings you back from that moment that you're having. So I just thought I'd share that because it really helped. But you have to like really feel like when Gus was saying, when you're washing your hands, feel the water and all that. You have to get the sensations and stuff really. And because what it does is really, it just takes the focus off of that moment that you're having, and it puts you in touch with your presence. So I just thought I'd share that. It worked for me, and it might help. It might help.
Well, yeah, thank you. You can teach the next class if you want. That's great. Perfect.
That is good. I like
it.
that. Yeah.
No magic. That's it. Simply primary senses, here and now.
Here and now. For the rest of you, did anybody have any comments or feedback about the hand washing mindfulness exercise that we did? Maybe it's the very first time you've washed your hands mindfully in your life and actually stop to feel the water, notice the smells and the sensations on your skin, maybe even think about how the water got there in the first place. Anything anybody would like to share with that?
Hi, can I share something?
Absolutely.
I mean, I heard something similar with the water, but it was like regarding the shower. When you take a shower, don't think about the plans, what you're gonna like do during the day. I remember I was guilty of that. I would take a shower and think, okay, I'll do this and that, and all these plans would just like, unfold in my head. And then I learned, just take a shower. And when the time will come, think about your work and do it. And every time when I take a shower now, I just tell myself, stop thinking. And it's really, it really helps to calm down my mind and myself.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing that, because what we used to say is, next time you're in the shower, notice who else is in there with you, because our mind is all over the place. But yeah, this is how we adapted. We took the shower practice and made it into the hand washing, hand sanitizer just for the pandemic. So you're absolutely right. We would have been promoting that one as well too. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the point of these exercises are that you can find a mindful practice pretty much at any moment of the day. You can mindfully open and close or lock your door and walk to your garage or elevator or car. You can mindfully drive to the grocery store. A lot of us often share that we got from point A to point B, and we don't remember how we got there. We don't even remember if we locked the door to the car, or if we locked the door to the house, or where we even parked the car, which is a sign of not being in the present moment. So the shower is a great place. We wanted to do something that, you know, didn't involve you all undressing and, you know, more than 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. But Ina, you're absolutely right. The shower is a great spot too. So feeling the lather, feeling the temperature, those sensations, definitely. And I love it, Gus. Who else is in the shower with you? Great. Well, if there's no more questions or comments, we're so glad that you were able to join us today. Hopefully you will find opportunities along the next days and until our next session to practice mindfulness. Have a great day, Gus. I don't know if you want to mention anything else before we let everybody go.
I'm available to answer any questions. As you know, contact Tebar and then she'll get me the message. So please, thank you for your attention today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Bye-bye.
have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.